I think Bill Evans is a little more sophisticated. He does something like this. Hey everyone, got a request to revisit the song Time on My Hands, and there's a great album by Chet Baker that I really need to listen to a little bit more. It's got the song Time on My Hands, and it also has 'Tis Autumn, and I've had a request for that one as well. I'll cover that soon. I've got the sheet music here, but I really need to spend some time with it. It's not a song I know well, and same with Time on My Hands. But Bill Evans is on piano, so it deserves our study. There's a little bit of reharm going on here. I will make some notations on the chart as to exactly what it is, and then you can take it from there. So they start off with this little flourish, and then they come right in with Time on My Hands, with a little bit of a reharm here. And this is a very typical reharm. And what it is you're taking your major seventh chord and you're turning it into a diminished chord. And with any diminished chord, you're always allowed to take any note in the chord and move it up by a whole step, or even just add that note to the chord. And you can do that with any of the chord tones, and you can do it with more than one. So, another thing I could add is, if I was up, say, in this general area, I could add a B flat to it. So this is a legal chord because we've got our diminished chord, and I'm going a step above F to a G and a step above A flat to a B flat. As an accompanist, you could do something like. Another way to look at it is just put an E triad over an F. Gives you pretty much the same thing. And then resolve it. Here in the third measure, they just go straight to an E7 with the flat 9 like this. And look, it's like the same chord, all right? It's just same thing we had here, but just with an E in the bass, and they do something like that. So, I don't know, does Chet play that melody first, and then Bill does that on piano? Yeah. Chet plays like, and then Bill Evans goes. Okay. And then we get to the G minor. And whenever you have like the same chord for two measures, you always want to find a little way to reharmonize it. So one way is just to go to the dominant chord that would lead you back to that chord. So, the dominant chord would be up a fifth on D7, and then just come back. You could even do like a tritone substitution there, something like that. Another common thing is to go like the 2, 5, 1. But here we're just going to the 5 chord and back to the G minor. Now here on the turnaround, now what I hear him doing is something like this. Okay, so what is that? I'm doing C7th. I'm getting to like a G minor here, just keeping the C in the bass. But look at the chords. We've got like C7. If we're going to go to the G minor 7, we can have like a D7, but I'm just playing the upper portion of that chord, which is like a little diminished chord. And then down to G minor, and then C7 with a flat 9, and that's another diminished chord right in there. Now, I think Bill Evans is a little more sophisticated. He does something like this. I'm not sure about that, but that's like just going down a half step to a B7, and then G minor, and then it's something like this. Because he's just, the bass is down here playing that note, and Bill is just doing something like this. All right, and there, that looks like a C minor, C sharp minor with a 6th. But that's really not what it is. It's a C with a 3rd and the 7, the flat 9 and the flat 13. All right, so he really jumps up into the high register there all of a sudden. That's on that E7 chord. And once again, see, it's the diminished chord. You know, E7 flat 9 is going to have an F in it. It has that diminished chord. That can be a whole tone extension from the diminished chord. And I believe that's what he does, something like that. All right, now here on the second ending, it sounds like he's starting with a 13 chord. And, you know, you could really play around with these notes. You know, just keep the A7 like this. You can go down this way. You can hit the 5. You can hit the flat 5. I don't hear him hitting the 5, but I hear him doing this. And then to a D7 sharp 9. Now look at the chart. It's got that D plus 7. This is kind of an old style of writing. It means you take a 7th chord and move the 5th up. The plus is like an augmented chord. So an augmented triad is like this. There's the 7. So that's the melody note. So there's no need really to write that chord, except for the fact that when you see that chord, a lot of times, I would say almost maybe 90% of the time, it's an altered dominant, which means you don't want to put in a regular 9. You want to put in a sharp 9 or a flat 9, and Bill Evans goes for the sharp 9, and he doesn't play this note, you know. He's supporting the trumpet player who's playing that note, and if you're supporting a vocalist, you know, it's a good idea to voice your chords so that you're not always banging out the melody. But you want it to support the melody. So, you know, you want it fairly close, like you wouldn't want to put it, you wouldn't want to play like that when they're singing this, right? So you definitely leave the 5 out. This is a great way. There's a nice little support there. You don't want to be too close to the melody. You don't want to be too far away from it either. And then, you know, sometimes just to keep your voicing smooth, you're going to hit the melody note, and that's okay. Okay, and here we get to the 2 chord, and the 2 chord frequently is an unaltered chord. So you do something like this. So you've got no alterations in that. I've got the 9 and the 13. Not the flat 9, not the flat 13. All right? But there's one exception to this. The 11th is like the suspension of the chord. So you don't want to play that either. Play the sharp 11, and it gives you what you call a polychord here. Some people call it that anyway. You've got an A major triad over a G7. I think the main reason to think of it that way is it just makes the chords easier to remember how to play them. All right? Easy to think of it that way. And what do they do there? Go right to a C7, I think? I think so. Yeah, so he does that little reharm very quickly and then just kind of goes to a D minor chord. Better run through that one more time. Yeah, so, just playing around a little bit with inserting a D9 back to the G minor, and then our C7 with a flat 9. Yeah, so the real 5 chord of the piece, of course, is C7. That's one of the places where you have an opportunity to add at least something to the chord. First choice is usually the flat 9. And here's that other polychord, in case you want to do it. Put the flat 9, put the 3rd in again, put a 13 on top, and it's like an A over a C7, and leave the 5 out. Okay, so like that. These two inversions are most often used. Up here, you're starting to get, your hands are too far apart to have a nice sounding chord, so I'd have to add another note in there. Just little hints. All right, now here's a classic progression. So he's doing. All right, so they're just showing the D plus 7. But what comes before a D7? We've got 2 measures of D7. So, let's proceed the D7 by going up to the 5th, which is the chord that leads you, right? A7 leads you to D, right? That's the cycle of 5ths. So we're going to do this chord. All right, now look, this is that other polychord. It's like an F sharp chord over an A7th, right? And I've already got the 3rd, so I don't have to put it there. And of course, we're going to leave the 5 out because of all these extensions. And then we flat the 13, and that moves us to a D9 right there, and a D flat 9. And that's just one of the most common progressions in jazz. It usually happens, like if you're in the key of F, it would happen on the third of the key, right, on the 3 chord. So, and then let's see how they handle the next part. Yeah, and the melody is that sharp 11, but if you just play unaltered dominant chord, you'll be fine. And you could add that note in there, but since the melody is that, you don't have to worry about it. And of course, on the last 2 measures, it's going to be a turnaround, a little walk around the block, 1 to the 6, and then cycle of 5ths, to the G, to the C. And there's infinite ways to do this. All right, so using some of those poly chords, I put the A triad over a G. That gives me that unaltered dominant, even though it's got one altered tension. Then to a C chord, and you can make it as rich as you want, you know. Something like that maybe. So we got F. Another way of doing it. Now, you really could just play diatonic or scale tone chords. We just go to D minor, G minor, and C. That's the most basic way of doing it, but you can turn any of those chords into a dominant. D7, G7, and C7 has to be a dominant. Now, a few neat things that happen in his solo. Let me scoot up to that part. Okay, so he starts with just moving block chords around in the George Shearing style, and then he gets to that E7 with the diminished chord like this, and he starts going, you know, playing a chord with every note. It's pretty cool. Yeah, just using the diminished scale too. Something along those lines. Yeah, so that's it. Hope you enjoy the video. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave some